Hi, welcome Ashok and Roop. We are in the next section of our We the Leaders research dissemination video. So today's theme that Ashok we would like to discuss with you is on which came up very largely from the founding members, from the founding leaders of many social impact organizations who spoke with us during the research, was how does a social impact organization become an institution? The viability or the sustainability of my organization or social impact organizations. Leaders expressed questions on how does the organization sustain beyond the founder? What happens after me? What is the future of the organization beyond me? Does it rise and fall with me? What are some of my dreams and aspirations for the legacy that I want to leave behind? What do I want to leave behind? So these were a set of questions that we'd asked many founding leaders and many second line and aspirational leaders from organizations during the research. And there were themes that came up around succession, around inheritance, very, very significant for many of us. So Ashok, would you like to please highlight a few of the important themes that you would like to bring up around this?
Uma, the first point I'd like to make in this, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that if you recall, the profile which came up through Hume individual, which was the individual profiler, and the profile which came up on Hume organization, which is an organization profiler, are almost identical. Now, what this suggests is that the identity of the progenitors or the leaders and the identity of the organization are completely fused with each other. There is very little, the organization is the individual is the organization. There is very little differentiation between the individual leader and the organization. Now, part of it will happen in any small organization, but I think the nature of these organizations makes it a lot more so. One of the implications of that, then consequently, particularly from a long-term point of view, is that the organization invariably operates more from what I call an inheritance mindset rather than a succession mindset. Now, the difference I'm making between the two, inheritance is something which you receive.
Yeah.
It's in a sense bestowed upon you. In a sense, what you have inherited, you feel a certain commitment, loyalty to be pure to it, to preserve it, to keep in it all its purity. Succession, on the other hand, has a much less of an affiliative connotation. It has more a professional connotation. You don't see it as a bestowal. You see it as a transition. It's a transition which is taking place from one generation to another generation. And it's, in a sense, the individual is earning it. The individual with the succession mindset is likely to give to himself or herself the freedom to redefine it. In inheritance, it's a little difficult. In inheritance, you kind of feel hesitant. Should I? Do I have the legitimacy? I'm carrying it on behalf of someone else. Whereas in succession, you say, I've earned it, I have taken it. Now it's my baby. Now I have to give it a direction. Now I have to give it a shape. So that becomes a difficult over here. So what you find, for instance, and in the next level beyond the progenitor, the next level, you would either find people who are good sons and daughters, and I'm not talking physical, I'm talking psychologically, who kind of receive, who shape themselves purely along the lines of the progenitor. They become, in a sense, they're loyal followers, and they would say, okay, then I can carry it forward. Or they feel constricted, and they say, okay, if I have to do it the way I want to do it, then I have to move out and create something on my own. Right? Because, in this place, only this man's vision, this man's perspective is viable. If I have a different perspective, then I have to move out. Or I convert myself into a kind of a professional who says, okay, I'm a professional here, and today I'm here, tomorrow I'm there. So therefore, all these three are not very conducive to building what you call a long-term institution. If a long-term institution have to be built, they cannot be on the basis of only inheritance. They must have an element of succession-centric thinking.
The profiling of organizations in this sector, there seems to be one pattern, is that leadership is largely defined by the leader, and the leader is who's created the organization, right? The second line, the relationship between the leader and the second line is what is very loyalty becomes a bigger currency than often, let's say, competence.
Yeah.
One
of the implications, yes.
Differences of opinion, ideology between the leader and the second line will be very difficult to manage, right? So if there are differences in the second line, either they will move out, or what you're saying, they might swallow the bitter pill and just continue to work as a worker. Yeah, and that's true, because we've heard while we were interviewing the second line leaders, and which was almost 50% of the total sample of this research. I think the idea of what will it take for you to become the leader of this organization, I think the doubts were really about, do I have space to bring in my unique contributions?
Absolutely.
And how do I engage with my differences, around governance, management, managing relationships with the community or with donors, etc., etc. And that seems to be one of the issues which keeps the second line leaders then either move into joining other organizations, starting their own organizations, or going and doing something else. So as a result and an experience that a lot of founding members find it very fatiguing when they may have invested in a certain group of people who they believe that should take up the organization after they move out, then they find that when the time comes, that these people are either not ready, or they move out, or they just don't want to take on the responsibility. So that also contributes significantly to the loneliness of the leaders, saying that it is my baby, I have started the organization, and I will have to carry the responsibility. Nobody else is really going to own it up the way I have owned it up. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I think what. The only thing I'd like to add to that is that the nature of these organizations is such that personal inspiration is a very significant part of the leader. It is because the leader is personally inspiring.
Or what we call charisma.
They are not just dry professional bodies. Succession mindset is very easy in dry professional bodies. To bring in succession mindset in organizations which are dependent on the inspirational quality of the leader is very, very difficult. There, the slipping into the mindset of inheritance is very easy. So the difficulties of, the differences that they may have, they may voice it, they may not. So many of them, even in their discussions that had, they voice tactical differences with their leaders, but very rarely ideologically different positions. And whenever there was ideologically different positions, you could see that the person is now only waiting to step out and create something. It's almost as though they can't coexist. It's in a sense very similar to the collaboration problem that we talked about.
Actually, many of the
collaboration internally across levels. Yeah.
We also had a couple of leaders who had voiced this, that about how much they hold the leader in great regard and affection.
And reverence.
Reverence as well as affection was both very, very clear. So I understand when you say that this makes it even more difficult to just go via succession mindset and because of that reverence and the affection for the leader, I think even sharing about certain doubts, the second line leaders, many of them talked about how do I build my resources and skills and credibility like him or her? How much power can I claim in this system? And will I be as respected, valued, and feel as fulfilled as the founding leader? So, these kinds of doubts, I think, when they shared, I think this has got to do a lot with the personal power, the personal charisma that the founding leader had and has, and makes it more complicated, like you say.
Right. Thank you, Ashok, for bringing in this very strong insight about inheritance and succession. I think it, again, is one of those provoker that will keep us busy till the next time we meet. Thank you. Thanks, Uma. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.